Chapter 54 is the novel's climax. It's Magwitch's big escape. And it starts off with one of the novel's most famous quotes. It was one of those March days when the sun shines hot and the wind blows cold, when it is summer in the light and winter in the shade. And you know exactly what kind of weather Dickens is describing there. When you're out in the sun, especially on a spring day, and it's nice and warm, but then as soon as you go into the shade, all of a sudden it's cold. That hot, cold imagery parallels the uncertainty surrounding Magwitch's journey. Is it going to be a success or not? And the objective correlative throughout the chapter also parallels that questioning mystery looming over whether he's going to be able to make it. Here's the plan. They're leaving Wednesday morning and they're going to pick up Magwitch at 9 a.m. right off the coast of Mill Pond Bank. And then they're going to row and then stay somewhere for the night and aim for the 9 a.m. steamboat going to Hamburg, Germany. The reason they chose that one is because right after, Rotterdam has a 9 a.m. steamer, which would be going to the Netherlands. And if they miss one, then they can do the other. Of course, things don't go according to plan, as you can see. On their way to pick up Magwitch, Dickens spends a paragraph narrating the pollution of the Thames River. Floating broken baskets, scattering floating chips of coal and shaving, cleaving floating scum of coal. It goes on in this rather run-on sentence, and it's just another example of Dickens' social commentary. He is making a point to say how the Industrial Revolution has led to immense pollution and crowding on the Thames River. And of course, this is before the days of cars and trucks, and so all shipping and merchandise is transported on the river. So just something I wanted to point out. But when they arrive to pick up Magwitch, he is calm and cool. He has always been parallel to the imagery of water, Miss Havisham's foil, and we saw what happened to her with the fire. So he gets on the boat on page 465, and Pip says that he had his boat cloak on and he looked as a natural part of the scene. It was remarkable. He was the least anxious of any of us. So Magwitch's temperament, he's really going with the flow here, as he always has, and this hasn't been his first aquatic escape. He left the hulks a couple of times and then of course escaped from Australia through the boats, so he's totally chill. And he says this wonderful quote on page 465, very famous. He says, "If you had known, dear boy, what it is like to sit alonger, my dear boy, and have my smoke, after being day by day betwixt four walls, you'd envy me, but I don't think you know what it is." And Pip says, "Well, I think I know the delights of freedom." And Magwitch says, "Ah, but you don't know it equal to me. You must have been under lock and key to know it equal to me." So that's an interesting little exchange they have, because Magwitch doesn't fully know Pip. Magwitch doesn't know how Pip was figuratively under lock and key, and really he hasn't experienced freedom his entire life. He wasn't free when he was under Mrs. Joe. He wasn't free when he was the apprentice to Joe as a blacksmith. He hasn't been free under the chains of his love for Estella and his belief that Miss Havisham had been his benefactor. He hasn't been free since Magwitch has been his benefactor and Matthew Pocket has been his tutor. Pip has yet to make any decisions with the exception of funding Herbert Pocket's future completely on his own. And so he, in some ways, has a lot more in common with Magwitch than Magwitch realizes. And everything seems to be smooth sailing. Magwitch, I think, has his doubts that it's going to work out, because he says, you know, it's flowing so soft and pleasant in the water, but I was thinking we can no more see the bottom of the next few hours than we can see the bottom of this river. So he's like, we can't be sure that it's all going to work out. And sure enough, things start getting murky on page 467 as the afternoon settles in and they're about to approach their lodging for the night. And a little squat shoal house on open piles stood crippled in the mud, on stilts and crutches, and slimy stakes stuck out of the mud, slimy stones stuck out of the mud, and red landmarks and trademarks stuck out of the mud. So mud, 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 mud. Objective correlative for the fact that things are going to get a little sticky. It's not going too smooth. And sure enough, there's somebody following them. We later find out it's Compeyson and a police officer, because Compeyson's a free man now, and he's all in black, dressed prosperously, and he has solicited the help of the authorities to capture Magwitch and send him back to jail, where he will then be put on trial for the death penalty. And so, though they are creeped out by these followers in a four-oared galley, two sitters, so two people, 4 oars that are rowing, they go ahead and stop at a little public house, and it's just like, it makes me think of just an old Waffle House. It's a A good fire in the kitchen, eggs and bacon to eat, various liquors to drink, and it was kind of a dirty place, just a sketchy little establishment. And there even is a guy there who is the Jack, and he's a totally minor character, and yet he has his own set of idiosyncrasies where he loves to collect shoes, especially shoes of people who have drowned. And he'll swim out there and take their shoes off, and he's wearing a bloated pair of shoes. So such a strange detail for this man. But he mentions that they're being followed, and he thinks it might be customs. So people trying to, you know, if you travel internationally, you have to go through customs. And back then, I think it was through the use of a button. And so they're thinking, oh, customs officers are after them. But of course, we know better, dramatic irony. They spend the night, and in the middle of the night, Pip wakes up and looks out the window. Now, Magwitch is sound asleep. And then Herbert and Startop are in another room, and Pip lets them continue to sleep because they're the ones doing all the hard work. But Pip looks out the window and he sees two men investigating their boat, and it's really creepy. Imagine you look out your window at night and you see two strange people looking in your car, you know? So Pip, although unsettled, he decides not to wake people up because they need their rest, but he knows they're going to have to reformulate their plan on Thursday morning. And so sure enough, they decide to hang out at the public house, and instead of going at 9, they're going to go at noon. And Pip and Magwitch are going to walk together down, and Herbert and Startop are going to pick both of them up, and then they're going to aim for the 1 o'clock steamer instead of the 9. But Pip is more anxious than Magwitch. As they leave and start their walk down, Magwitch is smoking his characteristic pipe, and one would have supposed that it was I who was in danger, not he, and then he was reassuring me. I think Magwitch has, as we've seen, come to terms with the fact that he might die. And he's okay with that. He's lived a full life. He's fully redeemed himself. He's given everything he can to Pip. And so I think he is at peace. And that's something Pip has yet to attain in his redemption stage. And so they do make it onto the boat. But sure enough, zoom, here comes Compasson and the police officer in disguise, rowing right next to them. And these pages, page 472 and 473, were so climactic and dramatic, it might have been confusing. And I'm going to show a movie clip. Now, in the book, it happens in the middle of the day. In the movie clip, it happens at night. But take a look and see how the capture happens.
Go, boys. Go. Go on, boys, row. Stop! Stop that boat! There they are! Go on, boys, put your back into it! Row!
You have a returned convict there. His name is Abel Magwitch. Apprehend the man. Call upon him to surrender.
Keep going! Come on, Wilson.
Row! Stop! Stop that boat!
Boys, they're closing on us!
No! No! Get it! you come. Give me your hands. Give me your hands.
You can see by the video how dramatic this scene is, and in the text it might be kind of confusing. If you've ever been in a car accident, you know how sometimes time seems to slow down right before the impact? That's how Pip narrates this scene. So they're in their boat, the Compasson and the police officer are in the other boat, and the police officer says, "We have a returned transport there. That's the man, Magwitch, otherwise Provis. I apprehend him and require you all to assist." And of course, then the covered guy removes his hat and it's Compasson. Meanwhile, the steamboat is rapidly approaching and you can't slow down. It's like the Titanic compared to these little rowboats. And so you saw in the video how intense it was upon impact. How Pip and Magwitch quickly underwater, but Pip is pulled ashore and he doesn't know what has happened to Magwitch. Well, Magwitch bumps his head and he's severely injured. But Compasson is the one who drowns, not Magwitch. And that's significant because with Miss Havisham catching on fire and watching this imagery unfold throughout the novel, you might have thought Magwitch would drown, but he doesn't. Compasson, our evil villain, is the one that gets what was coming to him. I saw it was Magwitch swimming. So here he comes. But as soon as he's taken aboard, he's put into handcuffs, and the money that he had, the portable property that Wemmick preached, goes straight to the state. So England's going to get to keep that, not Pip. But for the purposes of Pip's redemption, that's how it had to be. And the chapter ends in an emotional and poignant way. So before Magwitch is taken to Newgate Prison, Pip is able to say goodbye. And here is his narration at the bottom of 475. "By now, my repugnance toward him had all melted away, and the haunted, wounded, shackled creature who held my hand in his, I saw only a man who had meant to be my benefactor, and who had felt affectionately, gratefully, and generously towards me with a great constancy through a series of years. I saw in him a much better man than I had been to Joe." Nothing is as it seems, folks, and that's again the theme of the novel. But Pip was so ashamed to take the money from Magwitch because Magwitch was a convicted prisoner, a criminal, and really in the end, Magwitch was the bigger gentleman than anybody. He was so generous and consistent with Pip ever since Pip was a little boy. And finally, we see Pip in his redemption stage realizing it. When Magwitch first came, Pip hated touching his hands. And now they're holding hands together. And he realizes Magwitch has been better to Pip than Pip has ever been to Joe. And so at the end of the chapter on page 476, Magwitch says, "Dear boy, I've been quite content to take my chance. I've seen my boy, and he can be a gentleman without me." That's the other thing. Magwitch will never know that Pip stopped taking his money. That was Magwitch's dream for Pip, was to make him the gentleman that he could never be. And so Pip is not going to take that away from him. He will always dress the part in front of him. And it'll only be that Pip and Jaggers and Wemmick know the poverty that Pip is soon slipping into. And Herbert knows too. And Pip says this, "I will never stir by your side when I am suffered to be near you. Praise God." And Pip says this, "I will never stir from your side when I am suffered to be near you. Please God, I will be as true to you as you have been to me." I felt his hand tremble as he held mine, and I heard that sound in his throat, softened now like the rest of him. Magwitch starts to cry, that clicking in his throat. So keep reading, we're almost done.